Hey folks, it's Carl at Sterling Health and Fitness, and we're coming back at you here with part 2 of our segment about talking about yoga today with my special guest Ariana Rabinovitch. So part 1 we talked a little bit about benefits, and so in this segment we're going to talk about styles of yoga. And I'm just going to let you run with this because I know there are many different styles, and we talked a little bit about hot yoga and some other things, and you have your own style too.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you run with it and just tell us a little bit about the various styles out there.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big can of worms.
Yeah, I bet so. Yeah.
Because there are so many styles out there, and I'm sure there are some that I don't know about too, because they're constantly being innovated.
Mm-hmm.
But traditionally, there is Ashtanga yoga and Iyengar yoga. I think those are the two big ones that started coming over to the West and shaped the yoga scene that we have today.
Okay.
And Ashtanga is it's a series of 3 sequences that are repeated over and over again, and they're led by a teacher who just calls out the names or the numbers of the poses, and he'll or she'll walk around and tell the person if they're ready to move on to another level, or if they're ready to perform a certain pose.
Okay.
It tends to be very fast-paced and breath focus, I think. Something I think they do Ujjayi breathing, which is a constriction of the throat, and you can hear the breathing when people are practicing.
Okay.
Iyengar is another kind of style, less flowy. He was focused on the structure and tried to let therapeutic principles influence what he was doing initially. And he himself was very sick as a child, and he says that yoga cured him. And he was able to overcome many physical difficulties because of it. And his style is still very prevalent today, and especially in New York.
Okay.
And it's holding poses for longer periods of time, focusing on your form in the pose, using a lot of props to support the pose and maybe bring you deeper into a stretch, which I've said is not always good. But I think those are the 2 big ones that influence the yoga scene today. And now we have vinyasa, we've got power yoga, we've got hot yoga, which I'm not a fan of, we've got Bikram yoga, and so many styles. And for me, what's influenced me the most is yoga tune-up, or that's one of the styles that has influenced me. That was created by a woman named Jill Miller.
Okay.
And she,
yeah. I've heard of. She's on a couple podcasts I've listened to here and there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be interviewing her next week also.
So I think maybe Dr. Perry might have.
He did. He definitely talked to her.
That's where I heard her first.
She's phenomenal.
That's awesome.
And one of the things that I love about her is that she lets anatomy influence how she teaches, and she wants people to improve their proprioception, their body awareness, and their quality of movement as well. So she has a terrific method. Trying to think of other styles that are out there. I'm sorry, I'm probably not doing justice to everything that's out there. Kundalini is another kind that tends to be more spiritual, with interesting positions of the body and interesting breath work that you do.
Well, I'm interested to hear what you do.
Yeah, so
let's talk about what you do.
Yeah, so my style of yoga, I call it integrated yoga, which is kind of a buzzword in functional movement world. And I like to think of it as a blend of yoga, functional movement, and corrective exercise. And I was teaching in the beginning, when I first started teaching, more traditional, although students would probably say I was never traditional, but in my mind it was more traditional yoga, some more flowy stuff and based on what I had learned. And yoga is supposed to be therapeutic. This is something that we're taught, that this is therapeutic for the body, no matter how often you're doing it, no matter what you're doing. And so I would see the people coming into my classes, even if they were regular yoga students, coming in with really poor quality movement, basic structural issues, poor breathing. And I'm like, well, the yoga's not helping them. And in most cases, it's making it worse.
Interesting.
Especially people who are at a desk all day and tend to. I do this too. I find myself in this posture all the time. I do a lot of desk work, unfortunately.
And all that.
And so if you're in this position for 8 hours and you're not aware that you're in this position and don't do stuff to correct it, and then you go to a yoga class, a typical power yoga class where there's lots of a pose called chaturanga, which is kind of like a push-up. And so if you've got this position and you come into a chaturanga and do that like 50 times with your body weight, you're not improving the structure of your shoulders.
You're probably aggravating it, right?
Aggravating it, making it worse.
Because you're actually flexing an overactive muscle to begin with, right? There's a whole corrective thing right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Movement, postural issues, movement, distortion patterns, and everything.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I basically made a challenge to myself. It's how it started. I was like, what if I could create a series of sequences that would address what I'm seeing, address issues of the general population. Even athletes, actually. I see athletes with the same kinds of things. So I said, okay, what would be the most important things that I could address in the group classes? And so I created 5 sequences. And in every sequence, we work on the breath. So we go back to this optimal breathing thing because it's the foundation for everything. So we work on the breath in every class. And then I start with core strength, core stability. I prefer that term. But I think that having intrinsic, reflexive core strength is another foundation to everything. So we have a core class. And then we move on to, I call it my back bends class, but it's really about the T-spine. Because the thoracic spine, I see so much rigidity in the thoracic spine.
Interesting, yeah.
And that affects a lot of other things up and down the chain of how you move. So I have a T-spine class to try to get more mobility in the T-spine. Then I have my balance class because I see poor balance in a lot of people. So, and that relates to Dr. Emily Splickel's work. I tie in a lot of what I learned from her into my balance
with the
class.
barefoot
stuff.
Yeah.
And barefoot activation. And then we have a hip mobility class.
Great.
And then a neck and shoulder relief class. So I rotate those 5 sequences over and over again.
That is cool.
And the goal is to create an integrated, functional you.
Well, I love that approach because we've talked off camera about I'm going to sound terrible here, but I'll just admit that when I'm walking down the street a lot of times I observe how poorly certain people move, and this is not a judgment at all by any means. This is just a fact. I even have my own movement issues. I mean, I'm always working to try to improve my functioning and my moving. It's gotten better over the years, but so from the trainer perspective and being a corrective exercise guy and all that, I'm automatically going to the mode of, like you said earlier, I wonder what I can do with that person. Like, what would I do? And a lot of times I kind of know just by watching them move. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel like there's such a need for people in the profession of health and wellness in general and fitness, which includes yoga and so many other different styles of being healthy. What makes yours beautiful is you're looking at it from this perspective of movement, functionality. You've got integrated, the integrated thing. I love that. That's so cool because I
appreciate that.
I know a lot of people who instruct and teach yoga, and I've never heard one of them use the word corrective movement or try to integrate to correct or improve those things. I've never heard any of them talk about that. It's usually about, again, non-judgment, it's about flexibility a lot of times and relaxing, and that's fine. But what about the movement? You could be really flexible and move poorly.
Oh yeah, I see it all the time. I see it all the time.
I know a lot of people who are really flexible and move poorly. So, like I mentioned, I like how you integrate this. You have the integrated approach. You have corrective, you have movement, and so anything else you want to share about what you do in your yoga classes? And I definitely want to make sure we mention your website, arianayoga.com. You'll see it on the screen. You can find out all about Ariana and her classes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything. Plus links to Facebook and your podcasts.
Right.
Anything more you want to add about this?
Well, I guess it's how I work with my private clients, because I found that I needed to supplement my yoga training with other kinds of training that are anatomically based or that deal with functional movement. Mm-hmm. And I think in the yoga world, in the yoga teaching community, that we tend to live in a bubble when it comes to body education. And there are certain things that have been handed down, like from teacher to teacher, or things that we learn from our teachers that are said in yoga classes, and I've said plenty of this stuff too, that's just not true. Mm-hmm. And not founded in science, and it's just, again, it just exists in this yoga bubble. It's not helpful to people. So I tried to learn I stepped outside of that bubble and tried to learn about the body in different ways, with anatomy. Brent Brookbush is definitely someone I learned from.
Dr. Brent. He's the man.
He's the man. But it doesn't stop there. I studied Western anatomy from other sources too. I did an anatomy studies for yoga teachers course. Functional movement screen. I learned how to do that. Ray Cook is a huge influence for me.
Yeah.
And neurodevelopmental stuff. Dr. Perry Nicholson is a big influence for me.
Right.
And neurokinetic therapy I also have started to do, to look at movement compensation patterns and stuff. So I've tied all of that together into how I work individually with my clients, so that I can look at the person and see how their movement could be better.
You're treating a whole person too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is awesome. Well, this is great. I appreciate you sharing about that. So be sure to go to her website. It's on the screen. And we're going to come back at you here with how to get started. If you haven't done yoga, or maybe you've already done it, but you're looking to get started back into it again, we're going to talk about how to get started. So thanks for watching. Have a good day.